Hello and welcome to the final chapter of The Siege. So it's great news that we have finally made it to the end of this novel. It's now May 1942. The weather is getting warmer. It's spring in the Northern Hemisphere. So the second point we need to be aware of is the fact that this population of Leningrad has decreased by 50%. Which is very significant. Now, if you think about this, many of the people who would have died would have been soldiers, so men who were teenagers or in their 20s in particular. Then also young children under 5 years old, and also elderly people would have died as well. Marina has also died, but there's no exact date given for her death. So it's a little bit of a mystery as to when she actually passed away. Evgenia and Zena appear in the final chapter, and perhaps they're a little bit more humble than they were originally. If you remember earlier on, Evgenia was this sort of scary man because he's a party member and he didn't like Anna. After what he's been through, he seems to be a little bit more humble. So Mikail and Marina are buried in mass graves. I don't know how to pronounce the name of that cemetery, but it's a very famous cemetery in Leningrad. There's an idea that is coming through of Evgenia. She's planting vegetables. She's a powerful worker. And this is very similar to her efforts on the Luga line earlier on. And the final point I really want to make is that this novel only covers the first year of the siege. So it sort of ends, and you might get to the end and think, oh, well, that's good, everything's finished. But actually, in real life, the siege would last for another year and a half. So close to 900 days, which is an extremely long amount of time. And I put there that it finished on the 27th of January 1944. Now, Hitler was eventually defeated on April the 8th, 1945. So if you think that Hitler was in Berlin at the time, that was his capital city, it was actually the Soviets who were making great progress defeating the Nazis in the East. And if you think of DDay in France, that took place in June of 1944. So between June of 1941 right through to April of 1945, the Soviets were fighting the Germans. So that's nearly 4 years of continuous fighting. Whereas if you think of, as I said before, the D-Day landings, and the fighting through France and then eventually through Germany, that only really went on from June 1944 to April 1945. So that was less than a year. Now the Allies had been fighting in other places like Italy and Africa before that, and also in the Atlantic Ocean. So the Allies were involved in the war, but the point being that the Soviets were involved in the land war for a much longer period of time. And it's very vicious. So in total, 25 million people from the USSR were killed in World War II. We only have one chapter to look at today, and I want you to prepare for Monday. So hopefully you've finished those homework questions by now. If you haven't, use the rest of your time today to make sure that you're ready for Monday. So some of you might have typed them up on your computer. If you have, you can send me a PDF. If you've written them in your book, that's perfectly fine, and I'll have a look next week. Also next week we're going to be working on the essay questions, so we'll talk more about that on Monday. Thank you very much.